Discover the miraculous faith of the sleepless old man who dared to defy 3 mighty giants. God. In the days of King Saul, the Israelites lived in a state of deep trepidation, for the fearsome champion of the Philistines, Goliath of Gath, had risen to challenge them. The people of Israel trembled at his taunts, for he was a giant, defying the God of the universe in his daily proclamations. In the town of Bethlehem dwelled Jesse, a humble farmer and father of 8 sons, who witnessed darkness pressing upon their land like a shroud. As dusk settled over the hills of Judah each night, he found himself wide awake, his sleep stolen by the weight of worry and unrelenting prayers for his family and countrymen. The dread of Goliath and the amassing Philistine army consumed Jesse's nights. He knelt in prayer, beseeching the Almighty to grant courage to his sons who had joined the Israelite ranks, trembling before the imposing figure that taunted them daily. "O Lord, be with my sons," he lamented, longing for their safety and the deliverance of Israel from this dire plight. In the early light of a fateful dawn, a divine spark ignited within Jesse's spirit. He made a decision that would alter the course of their lives. "David," he said to his youngest son, whose bright gaze and steadfast heart brought him solace amid strife, "take these provisions to your brothers and learn of their welfare." With bread and cheese clasped in David's hands, Jesse leaned closer and whispered words steeped in paternal love, "You are our hope, my son. Go swiftly, and return with news of their battle." As David journeyed to the encampment, the atmosphere buzzed with anxiety. The clamor of soldiers was laced with fear, yet it fell silent in the face of Goliath's contempt. The young shepherd's heart raced as he beheld the men of Israel cowering at the giant's insults. Who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? David cried out, his voice cutting through the murky despair that surrounded him. The faith Jesse had sown in David blossomed fiercely now, causing the young man to challenge the giant with nothing more than a shepherd's sling and a heart full of holy purpose. Back in Bethlehem, Jesse paced, eyes lifted towards the heavens. His prayers intensified, shifting from bleak worry to fervent hope, as he envisioned his son confronting the Titan. Sleeplessness was now irrelevant, for every beat of his heart thumped with faith that the God who delivered them from Egypt would now show his mighty hand once more. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select All Notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. As David stood before Goliath, his small frame a stark contrast to the formidable giant, he grasped his sling, ready for divine intervention. The air felt electric, as the weight of Israel's fate rested upon the outcome. All eyes fixed on the boy who believed, while Jesse held his breath, hope and fear intertwining in a sacred dance. The moment stretched into eternity. What would unfold in the clash of faith and fear, slingshot and sword? Would God demonstrate his might, and through whom would he reveal his glory? Jesse's heart pounded. Could the smallest among them conquer the mightiest of foes, moving toward an unknown destiny orchestrated by the Almighty? As David faced the towering figure of Goliath, the giant's voice boomed like thunder across the valley, "Am I a dog, that you come at me with sticks?" The Philistines laughed, their confidence swelling in the sight of their champion. Yet, David stood resolute, the weight of his task resting not on his shoulders alone but on the promises of the Lord. "Thou comest to me with a sword, and with a spear, and with a shield, but I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied," David declared boldly, each word a rock hurled at the walls of doubt. The air thickened with tension as the spectators, both Israelite and Philistine, felt the palpable shift in the heavens. He drew from his pouch 5 smooth stones, his hands steady despite the enormity of what lay before him. With each stone symbolizing faith, he spun the sling, gathering momentum, childlike wonder and divine conviction intertwined in his heart. "This day will the Lord deliver thee into my hand," he proclaimed, and the skies held their breath, watching a shepherd boy stand against a giant, both fortune and fate hanging on the tip of his slender arm. With a swift motion, David released the sling. The stone became a comet, soaring toward Goliath with divine precision. Time seemed to freeze as the projectile struck true, sinking deep into the forehead of the giant, who staggered and then fell face first toward the earth, crashing down like a great oak chopped at its base. A hush enveloped the battlefield, disbelief dawning in the eyes of the Philistines and a roar of triumph erupting from the Israelites. David rushed forward, grasping Goliath's own sword from its sheath, and, with a determined thrust, he cut off the giant's head. The sight of their champion defeated sent shockwaves through the ranks of the Philistines, and they turned to flee in terror. To behold such an act of faith transformed the trembling hearts of Israel. The soldiers who had feared the insurmountable danger now surged forth, emboldened by David's daring. "This is the work of the Lord," they shouted, as the banners of Israel rose high in the air, unfurling like the wings of hope. Meanwhile, Jesse, waiting in Bethlehem, felt an overwhelming swell in his spirit. He sensed the faint echo of victory as the news spread like wildfire. His heart soared with gratitude as he glimpsed the tapestry of God's sovereign purpose unfolding through his beloved Son. Little did they know that this monumental victory over Goliath was but a single thread woven into the grand narrative of his people's deliverance and destiny. The nations would soon take notice, and the throne of Israel would beckon. In the aftermath, as the tumult of battle settled, David carried Goliath's head, not only as a trophy of triumph but as a declaration that the God of Israel reigned supreme over all the earth. And yet, beneath the cheer of victory lay an unspoken truth: this was merely the beginning. The boy who killed a giant would soon be tested in ways he could not fathom, amidst love and strife, duty and desire. Yet Jesse could not sleep that night, for within him flickered a profound awareness that the miraculous faith demonstrated today was only part of God's grand design. What wonders awaited just beyond the horizon, and what trials must still be faced? What role would David play in the unfolding story of redemption and sovereignty? In the stillness of the night, beneath the stars bright with promise, Jesse pondered the depths of God's plan, a plan enveloped in mystery and interwoven with their heritage. Would David remain true to the God who delivered David from the hand of the lion and the bear? Would the very heart that slayed Goliath beat for God's will, even unto kingship? The Lord's ways were inscrutable, and the journey had just begun. And it came to pass that after David's triumph over Goliath, the news reverberated throughout the land, echoing in every city and village. The Israelites celebrated with great joy, praising the God who had delivered them. They sang songs of victory, and the words of their hymns spoke of David, the son of Jesse, saying, "Saul hath slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s. King Saul, hearing the accolades bestowed upon David, was filled with a darkening spirit of jealousy. The joy of Israel now seemed to haunt him. The king, who once stood tall and proud, began to see David as a rival rather than a servant, and his heart grew troubled within him. "Is this favored boy to take my throne?" Saul mused, his brow wrinkled in concern as he gazed upon David, still basking in the glory of his victory. "What has he that I do not? Has the Lord favored him above me?" The king's mind spiraled into turmoil as he fought the battles of the soul far more fearsome than those in the valley of Elah. Now, within the courts of the king, David continued to play his harp, soothing the troubled spirit of Saul. When the notes of melody filled the air, they brought a whisper of peace to Saul's tormented heart, yet, each strum was a reminder of the favor resting upon David. One fateful day, as Saul sat in his chambers clutching the spear, his mind darkened further. He hurled the spear at David in a fit of rage, seeking to pin him to the wall. But David, quick and agile, escaped the wrath of the king. Thus the rift between them was severed deeper, the camaraderie turned into an unyielding enmity. Realizing the peril he faced, David fled forth from the king's presence and found refuge with Samuel the prophet in Naioth. The man of God, perceiving the weight of destiny upon David, anointed him once more with oil, reaffirming the Lord's promise upon him. the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon David, empowering him for the trials to come. As the days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, David roamed the wilderness, pursued relentlessly. He was joined by a band of outcasts, men discontent with Saul's rule. They gathered round him, recognizing the anointing of God upon his life. In that desert, they formed a brotherhood loyal to the heart of a future king. But in the quiet places of his soul, David often cried out to the Lord. O God, why dost thou hide thy face from me? Art thou with me in these shadows? And through the trials, he learned to rely on the strength of the Almighty. For even in the wilderness, the hand of God was upon him, training him for kingship, teaching him to lead with a shepherdess heart. Meanwhile, Saul continued to chase David with the zeal of a man possessed. His paranoia became a heavy cloak, shrouding his once noble spirit. David, though pursued as a common criminal, remained steadfast in his trust in God, writing songs of lament and praise that would endure through generations. The people began to whisper amongst themselves, "Who is this David? Is he not the one anointed by Samuel to be our king? Does the Lord not fight for him?" As the tide of public opinion began to shift, Saul's grip weakened, and the divine hand of the Lord pressed heavily upon the throne. Yet still, as David wandered, the true depth of God's sovereign plan lay yet untold, concealed within the folds of time. Would this man after God's own heart rise to reclaim what was lost? And what unseen giants yet awaited him on the path to his destiny? The journey of faith had just begun, and the sovereign hand of God would not be stayed. And it came to pass that as David hid among the rocks and caves, news of his plight reached the ears of Jonathan, the son of Saul. Jonathan, who loved David as his own soul, felt a stirring within him. He departed from the court of his father, seeking out David in the wilderness, where the shadows grew long and the sun dimmed. When they met, the two embraced, their hearts intertwined as they shared their fears and dreams. Jonathan said unto David, "Fear not, for the hand of my father is seeking you, yet I am come to covenant with you anew. The Lord, who hath chosen you, shall protect you, and I shall stand by your side." Thus they reaffirmed their bond, and with a solemn oath, renewed their promise of friendship, firm in their hearts that David was destined for greatness. As they spoke, the Spirit of the Lord fell upon them, and David recounted the cries of his heart before the Almighty. "O Lord, why dost thou allow this servant to suffer at the hands of thy anointed? Thy ways are mysterious, and I am lost among these mountains." Yet in those moments of doubt, strength arose within him as he recited the psalms he had written in the silence of the wilderness, praising the faithful love of God, saying, "The Lord is my light and my salvation, whom shall I fear?" Psalm 27 verse 1. Meanwhile, Saul's rage grew fiercer. He called forth his servants and said, "Seek out David and bring him to me, for he hath turned the hearts of the people against me." The servants, laden with fear, scoured the land, yet still David eluded their grasp. The truth of his anointing became manifest, revealing that the shadow of the Almighty protected him. In the hours that followed, as the sun set low over the hills, a messenger arrived with grim tidings. "Behold, O king," he proclaimed, "the Philistines have invaded the land and raided the cities. We are pressed on every side." Saul, now torn between his obsession with David and the impending threat, called his army to take action, seeking impending battles yet closer to desperation. Yet fear gripped the heart of Saul. "The Lord hath turned away from me," he lamented, "and now David leans against the victories of the Almighty, while I am left in ruins." In the midst of these trials, David was called by his men to lead them against the encroaching forces. "O David, the time hath come. It is our hour to fight. With the strength of God, we will reclaim our land." They rallied around him, their swords shining in the dusk, filled with courage born of faith. As the night sky enveloped the earth, David lifted his voice to the heavens, beseeching the Lord for guidance. "O God of Israel, art thou not with us? Grant us victory over this might. Thy promises sustain me, and I trust in thee with my whole heart." His plea resonated through the valleys, and the presence of the Lord enveloped the company. And it was then that a revelation struck him as if the heavens opened. The battle would be fought not just with sword and shield but with the unwavering faith of the heart. For what greater enemy did he face than the fear and doubt left within? With the dawn rising above them, as the sound of the enemy grew closer, David glanced at the horizon, and a certainty blossomed within him. What shall be our battle cry? And so he led them forth with courage, their voices joined as one, the Lord is our strength, and with him, we cannot fall. Little did they know, though victory lay just beyond, the true sovereign plan of the Almighty was unfolding, a plan that would echo through the ages, shaping the hearts of all who called upon his name. What greater battles, unseen yet promised, awaited David in the depths of destiny? The stage was now set for God's miraculous deliverance, and every soul hungered for the unfolding of his purpose. And as the dawn light broke upon the mountains, the armies of David prepared for battle. The men, emboldened by their leader's faith, stood resolute, their hearts ignited by a shared purpose. David lifted his eyes to heaven once more, and his voice cut through the chilling morning air. O Lord, let our faith be as solid as the mountains, and let our hands be guided by thine own might. With that, the forces of Israel advanced, a mighty roar emerging from their mouths, resonating with the promise of victory. Their feet thundered across the earth, a sound like many waters cascading down a steep hill. As they drew near to the Philistine lines, David's heart stirred within him, he could feel the weight of what was at stake. The enemy stood lined in their armor, their faces hardened by years of warfare, their resolve brazenly challenging. Yet, among them, a figure of notable stature emerged, a giant named Goliath, towering among his brethren, whose very presence echoed the chaos and fear that filled Saul's heart. With disdain in his voice, he called out, "Send me a man that we may fight together. Am I not a Philistine? And are ye not servants of Saul? Choose ye a man for you, and let him come down to me." The clamor of Goliath's proclamation chilled the air. Yet fear took no root in David's heart. He stepped forward, saying unto his men, "What is this uncircumcised Philistine that he defies the armies of the living God? Who is he to challenge the name of the Lord?" His resolve irked the men around him. They whispered, "Art thou mad, David? He is a giant, a warrior from his youth, we are but shepherds." "But he knows not the power of our God," David replied, fire sparking in his eyes. He recounted to them the times when he had faced the lion and the bear, saying with conviction, "The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear, he will deliver me from this Philistine." 1 Samuel 17 verse 37, Jonathan looked on, filled with admiration, as David's faith shone forth like the sun chasing away the dark night. With hesitant hearts, his men began to rally around him, their spirits rekindled by the truth of his words. David was merely a youth, yet he spoke with the authority of a prophet, a leader called forth by the Almighty. As Goliath mocked further, David approached the giant, small in stature but colossal in faith. He stilled the panic within him and selected 5 smooth stones from the brook, placing them in his shepherd's pouch. With his sling in hand, he announced boldly, "Thou comest to me with a sword and with a spear and with a shield, but I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied." 1 Samuel 17 verse 45, a hush fell across the battlefield, a sacred pause where heaven and earth held their breath. In that moment, all eyes were fixed upon the two combatants, one a giant of flesh, the other a shepherd clothed in divine promise. With a swift motion, David placed a stone in his sling, and he began to run toward Goliath. The earth shook as his feet pounded in earnest, a force of faith rushing forth. As he drew nearer, he let the stone fly, and it struck Goliath between the eyes, causing the giant to stagger and ultimately fall to the ground, defeated. The armies of Israel erupted in a triumphant roar, the ground vibrating with the sound of victory reclaimed, while the Philistines, filled with dread, turned and fled. And the hearts of God's people swelled with joy, for they witnessed the mighty delivery of the Lord. But as David stood amidst the cheers of his men, he felt a stirring in his spirit. What shadow still lingers over us? He wondered, for he sensed that this battle was not the last. There remained great trials in the path ahead, trials that would forge hearts and compel the destiny of a nation. And the whispers of heaven echoed, "Seek me, David, for your journey has only just begun. There are far greater giants yet to face." Thus, the sovereign plan of the Almighty unfurled, revealing mysteries of faith yet unseen by mortal eyes, but divinely set to alter the course of generations. And it came to pass, after David had triumphed over Goliath, that the men of Israel surged forth with fervor, chasing the Philistines as a lion pursues its prey. The victory was resounding, for they chased them to the very gates of their cities, and the sound of their triumph echoed throughout the valleys, declaring the greatness of the Lord. In the aftermath of battle, Saul summoned David to his side, marveled by the young man who had defied the odds. "Whose son art thou, young man?" Saul inquired, and David replied, "I am the son of thy servant Jesse, the Bethlehemite." 1 Samuel 17 verse 58, but even in the joy of celebration, a shadow began to cast itself upon David's heart as he sensed that with victory would come envy. For as the women danced and sang, saying, "Saul hath slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s, the heart of Saul was filled with jealousy, and he cast a wary eye upon David henceforth. The Spirit of the Lord had departed from Saul and an evil spirit tormented him, he racked with fear and bitterness toward the one who had found favor in the Lord's eyes. David, meanwhile, played the harp to soothe the king's troubled soul, yet within Saul's heart, hatred festered like a wound unhealed. In hidden corners of the palace, whispers spread like wildfire. The throne room grew tense, a place once filled with divine purpose now swayed by suspicion and darkness. David remained steadfast, recognizing that his rise would spark greater trials. He would be pursued, not as a friend, but as a foe in Saul's eyes. "Lord, what is to become of me?" David cried out in solitude, as he sought the face of God. "You have delivered me from the hand of the giant, yet is there more I must endure?" The Lord spoke to David, saying, "Fear not, my servant, for I have a purpose that is greater than the giants before you. You shall endure trials that shall refine you like silver in the furnace, and through your struggles, nations shall come to know my name." Thus, David took refuge among the mountains and the caves. In hiding, he gathered a band of disheartened men around him, each man burdened and weary from his own trials. These were the despised and rejected, and to them, David became a beacon of hope. They called him their captain, their leader anointed by God, and he transformed them into valiant warriors in the process. Yet even in the wilderness, news came of Saul's fury, for he sought David with every resource at his disposal. The hunter had become the hunted, and the hearts of the people divided. One fateful day, as David and his men rested in a cave, Saul entered, unaware that the one he sought lay concealed within. The men urged David, "This day the Lord hath delivered your enemy into your hands, let us strike him." But David's heart was gripped with compassion, and he replied, "I shall not lay my hand upon the Lord's anointed." 1 Samuel 24 verse 6, as he cut a piece of Saul's robe, David's heart ached, and he felt the weight of his own calling. "My fate lies not in the hands of man but in God alone," he declared. And though Saul departed, the turmoil within David remained. The battle was not only against an earthly king but waged deeper against the shadows of doubt and despair that sought to undermine his spirit. The shadows whispered of betrayal and fear, but David clung to the promises of God. In a still moment, he heard once more the words of the Almighty, "You shall be a shepherd of my people, David. Fear not the giants of this world, for I shall be with you. Only seek to trust in me." Thus the sovereignty of God began to unfold, revealing a path that led not only to trials but deeper to revelations of faith, faith that would be tested in the fires of adversity, forging a legacy meant to glorify His name. The journey ahead would be fraught with danger and strife, yet it was within this struggle that David would discover the fullness of God's purpose, a revelation woven within the very fabric of destiny itself, "For I am raising a king to unite my people and lead them back to me." And it came to pass, after Saul departed from the cave, that David's heart was heavy, for he had been given a glimpse of what could be, yet it was shrouded in darkness of uncertainty. The idolatry of his own fears threatened to consume him, but he leaned upon the knowledge that his God was faithful. The winds of the wilderness howled at night, and the shadow of Saul loomed over every decision. David and his men, weary of the chase, sought solace in their bond, yet the longing for peace grew heavier with each passing day. They prayed together, casting their fears to the winds, and cried unto the Lord for deliverance, saying, O God of our fathers, hear our plight, rise up against our enemies. In the stillness, David remembered the promises spoken over him, the anointing by Samuel, the victories he had tasted, and the songs sung in his honor. He resolved to take refuge not only in prayer but also in the courage bestowed upon him by the Spirit. Then David spake unto his men, Let us seek a stronghold where we might rest our weary souls and prepare for what the Lord hath ordained. We shall journey to the wilderness of Ziph, for there, perhaps, we may find safety from King Saul. They set forth under the canopy of stars, their hearts resolute yet burdened with the weight of uncertainty. As they approached Ziph, scouts had reported that Saul, driven by his wicked spirit, was near, seeking David as a lion seeks his prey. It was there that David's heart stirred once more with a fervor born out of desperation and purpose. And as the shadows lengthened, Jonathan, the son of Saul, came unto David in the wilderness, bringing comfort, saying, Fear not, for my father shall not find you, you shall be king over Israel. With those words, David's spirit ignited anew. O my brother, how great is your love, David exclaimed. If it were not for your faith, I would be consumed by despair. I trust in the Lord's promise, yet my heart is vexed within me. Heavy was the fate that rested upon him, yet Jonathan encouraged David, reaffirming the covenant between them. You are the anointed one, David, and the Lord will not forsake his covenant. All shall be fulfilled. Then Saul, in his relentless pursuit, drew near, but David, wise in the ways of man and God, devised a plan. He sent spies to discern the movements of Saul and his men. Thus did David remain vigilant, seeking the guidance of the Lord. In those fateful days, as David lay upon the hard earth, he penned a lament in his heart, When the wicked rise against me, I shall lift my eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help? Psalm 121 verse 1. And lo, the day of reckoning drew closer, for it was written that the paths of men are determined by the Lord, and his plans unfold in ways that confound the wise. The battle for David's life was not merely against a king, but a fierce declaration of faith against despair. Now scribe this down, David instructed his men, For the Lord shall arise, and though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Psalm 23 verse 4. And the winds of divine providence began to shift, leading toward an encounter that would shape the course of history. For unbeknownst to David, a meeting of fates was ordained, a conflict awaited more than mere flesh. God's sovereign purpose would unfold in ways unseen, revealing his glory through the hidden battles fought in the depths of the heart. The time was coming when faith would dance upon the precipice of darkness, unveiling the great tapestry of divine deliverance and calling forth a king formed in the fires of affliction. For my sovereign plan shall soon take root, spoke the Lord in whispered promise, and the dawn shall cast aside the shadows. And it came to pass, as David sought shelter in the wilderness of Ziph, that the hand of the Lord was upon him. David's heart continued to yearn for truth and guidance, while Saul, consumed by madness and jealousy, pursued him with relentless fervor. The hearts of David's men, though loyal, began to waver like the fluttering leaves in the wind. In their hiding place, they gathered around David, their faces drawn with concern. David lifted his voice in prayer, O Lord, how long shall this trial endure? When shall justice be delivered, and your anointed be free from the hand of his foe? His voice echoed against the cliffs, a cry of anguish mingled with faith. Suddenly, the Spirit of God moved upon David, filling him with a prophetic insight. He turned to his men and spake, Gather round, for the Lord has stirred within me a wisdom to guide us. We shall take a bold step, let us descend near the camp of Saul. And as they journeyed under the cloak of darkness, the weight of fear began to lift from David's heart. For he remembered the words of the Lord through Samuel, that he would one day reign over Israel. "Fear not," he said to his men, "for the Lord is with us, and he shall deliver us." As they stealthily approached the encampment of Saul, they saw the great king asleep, surrounded by his mighty warriors, a sight both daunting and surreal. There lay the very man who sought David's life, the shadow of fear as palpable as the night. In that fateful moment, David and his warrior Abishai found themselves at the edge of the king's slumber. Abishai said unto David, "Let me smite the king. I pray thee, let me pierce him with the spear even to the earth, I will not need to strike him twice." But David, filled with a holy resolve, replied, "Nay, do not destroy him, for who can stretch forth his hand against the Lord's anointed and be guiltless?" 1 Samuel 26 verse 9. Therein lay the righteous path. David pulled back from the precipice of vengeance, remembering the covenant of God in his heart. Instead, he took the spear that lay beside Saul and a cruse of water, and withdrew into the darkness of the night. Once they had distanced themselves, David called out unto the camp, his voice resonant with authority, "Saul, why dost thou pursue me? I am but a flea, a little thing upon the earth." 1 Samuel 26 verse 20. He lifted the spear and the cruse, revealing the mercy he had shown. "See here," he cried, "I could have taken your life, yet I choose the path of the Lord, for vengeance belongs to him alone." Saul awoke, startled and trembled at the voice of David. With trembling lips, the king called out, "Is that thy voice, my son David?" And in that exchange, the heart of Saul was laid bare, and the depths of his soul quaked at the mercy shown to him. Tears welled in David's eyes, for he discerned the depth of Saul's sorrow and the churning wickedness in his spirit. "I shall not seek to harm you," David professed. "The Lord has put a new song in my heart, that I may walk in his ways. To him I surrender this burden." Yet within this confrontation, a shadow still lingered. Saul, though momentarily repentant, remained in the grips of his dark desires. The tides of destiny were not yet fulfilled, for unbeknownst to them, the hand of God was weaving a far greater narrative. Thus, the day came when two paths lay before David, a path of grace amid treacherous circumstances, or the lure of revenge that beckoned like a siren's call. What will become of this unfolding saga? For in God's sovereign design, shadows dance at the brink of dawn, and unseen forces prepare for a revelation that shall forever alter the course of Israel. "For behold," declares the Lord, "my purpose transcends the trials of the day, and the dawn shall rise with an unshakable promise." And it came to pass that David withdrew from the encampment of Saul, weighed down by both compassion and the burden of kingship that lay ahead. With the dawn breaking the veil of night, he and his men found refuge in a high place among the rocks. David's heart was heavy, yet a burning ember of hope flickered within him. As the sun rose in its splendor, David gathered his men. Before them, he recounted the events of the night, how he had spared the life of the king despite the opportunity for vengeance. "Brothers," he said, "the path of the righteous is often paved with the courage to remain steadfast in the face of evil. Let us not harden our hearts, for mercy reigns with God, and those who show mercy shall find mercy." Matthew 5 verse 7. While his men nodded in agreement, one among them, a man named Zelek, stepped forth and declared, "O David, thou art worthy to be king, yet this trial we endure seems beyond our understanding. Must we forever live in fear of Saul?" David looked upon him with compassion. "For every shadow of despair, our God has light in store. The Lord has spoken, and his plans shall unfold in their time. Trust in his ways, for they are higher than our own." Isaiah 55 verses 8-9. Days turned into weeks, each filled with whispers of the Lord's faithfulness and the persistent threat of Saul's pursuit. Yet, David remained firm, seeking counsel from the Lord through prayer and worship. In the quiet of the wilderness, he began to compose psalms, songs of devotion that echoed both his plight and trust in God's unfailing love. "The Lord is my light and my salvation, whom shall I fear?" he sang, Psalm 27 verse 1. Yet darkness stirred within Saul's heart, and he grew restless, tormented by the knowledge that his kingdom was slowly slipping away into David's hand. In his despair, Saul called upon his advisers, beseeching them to locate David and his men. They scoured the land, but the Lord kept David's hiding places secret from Saul. In the midst of this tension, a messenger approached Saul, bearing tidings of David's whereabouts. "Behold, he is in the wilderness of Maon," he said. Saul's heart leapt with renewed vigor, and he summoned the entirety of Israel's forces. "Go, let us pursue this man of deceit, let us rid ourselves of this threat once and for all." As the army set forth, the hand of God intervened. David, discerning the approach of Saul, turned to his men and affirmed, "Our God is a fortress, he will either deliver us from our enemies or grant us the strength to endure the storm." Psalm 46 verse 1. Before the armies met in battle, a Philistine force stirred in the land, drawing Saul's attention away. It was then that David realized the providence of God. The battle was not of his making but part of a divine orchestration beyond his sight. A whisper surged through his spirit, unraveling the depth of God's sovereign plan. "Fear not, for I am with you, I will never forsake you." Hebrews 13 verse 5. With renewed determination, David gathered his faithful men and ascended to a higher ground, looking upon the horizon. The hand of God is at work, we shall remain steadfast and trust in his unfailing love. As the dust of the approaching Philistines settled, David's heart burned with an unfathomable truth. This trial was but a chapter, leading toward the dawning of a kingdom yet to be fully revealed. Where it seems hope fades, the Lord's hand moves. Behold, David proclaimed, the path to deliverance is begun. The shepherd shall become the king. Thus echoed the promise of God, lingering like the morning mist, drawing closer the revelation of his perfect plan, a narrative birthed through trials, marked by faith, and destined for glory. And it came to pass that in the fullness of time, as the seasons turned and the hearts of men wrestled in turmoil, the divine hand of God began to manifest his all-encompassing plan. David, forged in the fires of adversity, emerged not just as a warrior, but as a shepherd of God's people. His song of lament turned to one of triumph, echoing across the valleys, lifting up those who also wandered in despair. One day, as David and his men gathered amidst the rugged mountains, news came from the land of Judah. "Lo, the Philistines are routed. The Lord has fought for Israel." They shouted. The air crackled with energy, hearts lifted in praise, for God's hand was evident in their deliverance. Yet within the palace, the spirit of Saul wrought havoc. He struggled against the dark shadows of jealousy that consumed him, the bitterness clawing at his heart as he recalled the adoration the people showed David. "Can this young man truly claim my throne?" He wondered, but in his tumult, he refused to see that the hand of the divine was no longer upon him. Then came the day when the word of the Almighty rang forth to David, "Arise, for I have a purpose for you. Go back to Hebron, for the time has come to unite my people." With reverent awe, David gathered his loyal men and journeyed homeward, feeling the weight of destiny pressing upon him. A king was emerging, not from the coils of ambition but from a heart after God's own. Upon arrival, the elders of Judah met him in earnest, for the news of his valor had traveled the land. They extended their hands, saying, "We acknowledge you as our king, for the Lord spoke through you." And in that sacred moment, David was anointed in Hebron, a golden horn of oil poured upon his head, the seal of the Most High upon him. The hearts of the Israelites rejoiced. He was not merely a king of flesh but a king with a divine mandate. "Let the names of God's children be remembered," he declared, "for it is the Lord who has delivered his people and placed them under the reign of his shepherd." Yet the fragmented kingdom posed great challenges. Saul's remnants lingered, and Abner, the commander of Saul's army, sent forth a feeble declaration, "Long live Saul's house." Conflict loomed again, testing the fragility of David's newly established rule. Thus began the tumultuous time of war, the house of Saul pitted against the anointed of the Lord. Abner led a faction of men loyal to Saul, while David, with a pure heart and God's favor, pushed forward, calling forth unity. "Restore the brokenness among our kin," he cried. "For we are but one people under one God." In the midst of struggle, the heart of David grew weary, often retreating to the secret place of prayer as the weight of his calling pressed upon him. There, he sought the face of God, pleading, "O Lord, guide my steps, for this calling is beyond my grasp." And the Lord comforted him, whispering promises of victory and strength, filling David with renewed resolve. Through battles bloody and fraught with betrayal, the echoes of God's faithfulness resounded. David's heart remained steadfast, not in the strength of man, but in the unwavering promises of God. The Lord granted him wisdom in leadership and strength in combat, yet still, the conflict festered. Then, years rolled on, with blood shed and valleys crossed, until one fine day, as the sun painted golden hues upon a newly dawning horizon, Abner crept toward David, feeling the tides shifting. "Your men stand ready for peace," he revealed, weary of war. David, filled with compassion, welcomed him, saying, "Show me the way to unite our people." In the days that followed, the kingdom was united at last, for David's heart, big enough for all, yes, even for them who had fought against him, reflected the heart of God. "Let love reign," David decreed, and he gathered all Israel together, celebrating the goodness of the Lord in their midst. In that moment, the shattered pieces of their history began to meld, forming a tapestry of grace and redemption, woven together by faith. And with the sweet sound of worship rising from every heart, David led them in joyous praise. "O sing unto the Lord a new song, for he hath done marvelous things, his right hand and his holy arm hath gotten him the victory." Psalm 98 verse 1. Thus, the people flourished under David, their shepherd king, who constantly sought the Lord in prayer and worship, establishing a legacy that would forever reverberate across the ages. His kingdom was not without trial, yet every storm bore forth the seeds of faith and resilience, forever rooted in the promise that God is sovereign over all. And it is written that good shall triumph over evil, with hearts finally aligned in obedience to their God, as they walked forward, hand in hand, into the glorious fulfillment of His divine plan. Beloved, this journey teaches us that we, too, must arise in faith, seeking our own paths of righteousness, steadfastly trusting in the God who holds all things. If you feel your heart stirred, do not delay. You need to subscribe now to stay connected to God's Word and the many powerful stories still to come. Hit that bell icon for immediate notifications. Leave a like now to help spread God's truth and His transformative love through the algorithm. Your voice matters, so comment your reflections and share how this testimony of faith has impacted your walk with Christ. Don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear God's message today. Only true believers understand the importance of joining together in faith to reach more souls for Christ. Let the world witness the miracles of pursuing God wholeheartedly.